is a long time. When I go to mediations, as the mediator, I play a game now to see if anybody in the mediation was admitted. And I think once there was one person who had been practicing longer than I had been, but in general, I've seen a lot of stuff. And now we're in kind of a new age, and I want to share with you where we are today, which is remote mediation. So in the who, what, where, why, when, the why. Well, obviously, because we're all coping with the COVID-19 2019. In California, the governor put out this executive order, which is still in place. On May 4th, the governor made some modifications for some limited retail starting tomorrow, so you can go buy flowers for. It's mostly still in effect, but for many of us, where it says no gatherings in groups of more than 10, that is not the restriction which applies to be as few as 2 people, no more than 2 people in a group, which it's real hard to mediate with only 2 people in the group. So how are your clients coping? They're nervous. Something like 4 million people unemployed in California. Some of them have gotten sick with the coronavirus. The people who have lost their jobs, they're having trouble applying for unemployment benefits. Many small businesses are struggling to survive. They're trying to get government assistance, and then they read that money went to Harvard University or the Lakers. They're upset. Here's the thing, foreign language. And a lot of times we just kind of rush through when we're with our clients and we talk about interrogatories and depositions, and they don't, even when you think you've explained it, they don't have a really good handle on what you're telling them about. And don't forget, even before they thought about legal proceedings, they were nervous. They had business reversals. They had injuries. They were coping with obstructions to try to use retail places that ended up as an ADA case, whatever. They were nervous even before they came to you. They got introduced to this legal world, and that made them nervous. And that's even before this whole pandemic stuff. So now the courts are essentially closed, certainly for civil practitioners. And yet, in many instances, such as the Central District of California, they're in place. So you have to meet those. So this just adds to the situation. So where are you vis-a-vis your client base? To an extent, you're in the same place you always were. Here's what clients are expecting of you. They may be nervous and upset, but it's important for you to project calm, because if they be competent, and of course what we're talking about today is the technology for mediation. So you need to be competent in using technology, just like you need to the other facets of your practice. And you need to be confident about knowing what you're doing, a certain swagger, if you will. Then the clients are not gonna see that competence. So you need both competence and confidence. So let's talk specifically now about video mediations and what the advantages are. So we're all social distancing. So if you're using video mediation, by definition, you're social distancing. Everyone is in their own place and staying apart. There's other advantages too. There are some kinds of situations where the parties are afraid of each other, in family law in particular. And I had a case where I talked to a plaintiff's attorney, and she told me that her client didn't want to get anywhere near somebody on the other side out of certain fears. So when you've got this forced distancing, that obviously provides a measure of safety. People are in the comfort of their own homes, and actually that helps assuage some of that anxiety. One of the issues that has happened is where in the house should they be? Because they could get too comfortable. In Florida, a judge wrote a letter to a bar association complaining, this is Judge Dennis Bailey in Broward County, Florida. He said a male lawyer appeared shirtless and a female attorney appeared still in bed, still under the covers. I was in a meeting yesterday and someone was lying down in bed with her head pillow. So you do want to talk to clients, perhaps not to get too comfortable. On the other hand, they may not have a choice about what rooms are available. The kids are in the dining room and the living room doing distance learning. Somebody's in the kitchen, maybe banging pots and pans, and so the bedroom may be the place where they are. So that's something to talk about with the client, about finding a place where they can, in peace and quiet, participate. And another benefit of the video mediation is it can be pulled together very quickly, the quickest possible way. So that's in addition to some other benefits of video mediation. I've had a lot of cases where a question came up about a report, about a document, and the attorney said, well, I don't have that, and they have to have somebody from the office right there where you work. If you have the things for you as the attorney at wherever you're working and they're handy, well, hopefully that'll be a lot more convenient and accessible than if you were in a remote location. Sometimes attorneys show up with one of those rolling carts full of files and they still don't have the right stuff. And sometimes they show up with little thin folders. So if you've got everything pertaining to the case at the place where you're sheltering in place, hopefully that'll allow you to access that material. You will not have to put up with traffic. You won't have to drive to the other side of town. And a lot of times people show up and they're rattled because they had to deal with the traffic. So not having to deal with the traffic is great on video mediation. Another thing that happens frequently is that the real decision maker, the check writer, if you will, the person who gives authority to settle, is out of town. And so you've got, maybe you're the attorney who's Johnny on the spot, or maybe the opponent is the face at the mediation, but the real decision maker isn't there and isn't seeing what everybody else is seeing. Well, with video mediation, if the person's in Chicago or Michigan or New York or wherever, they can participate via video and, if you will, level the playing field and bring that person in to see what's really going on. It can really be an impediment to settling the case when the person with the ultimate authority is not really seeing the dynamic of the mediation. So video mediation is great for that. And it may help you as the attorney in dealing with your client, your far away client, to have them actively participating. So that's a big advantage. And no pants. You've probably read some things about that, about people who show up typically with, now you only see the top half of the person. But people do, especially over several hours, get up to go for a glass of water or use the facilities or whatever. It's a really good idea to wear appropriate attire from head to toe. If your client is going to stand up, walk around, he or she should convey whatever image is appropriate for that case. Also, clothes help people with a frame of mind. And so if your client is in their jammies and bunny slippers, they're not going to really be in the right side. And there are some times when whatever side of the dispute you are on, you feel like somebody has come to a mediation and they don't have a seriousness of purpose. Well, certainly if they're wearing something inappropriate from the waist down, that situation. So I would certainly talk to your clients about wearing something that if they stand up and walk around is appropriate, and also just helps them wear something which would be appropriate for a live mediation, well, this is live, but for a mediation where everybody's in the same place. So those advantages of the remote mediation are in addition to the traditional advantages that you're probably familiar with. So that would include that earlier saves time and money in a case, so mediating is a good idea. You can schedule it whenever the parties can all get together with the mediator, as opposed to waiting on the court's calendar. You can have as much time as you need, again, in contrast to the court. So, I mean, I've been in mediations that went until the wee hours of the morning. That's not going to happen when you've got a court situation. Creating a public record. There's nothing in the court documents that shows that meeting. It is not open to the public the way a hearing is. As you know, we have strict confidentiality rules in California about everything that happens in mediation stays in mediation. It's the Las Vegas of litigation. So you have privacy of mediation. Your clients talk about being nervous. Much of the time they're either not at court with you or they're out in the hall and they pretty much never get to talk, even if they are observing something. And mediation may be the only time that they get to tell their story to a neutral party. And there's an advantage too in that the mediator is a blank slate and can give you a reaction that hasn't been colored by with the situation. In mediation, it is the parties who are in control, as opposed to, as the saying goes, 12 people with a driver's license. You are not creating a precedent. So perhaps to have an early acceptable resolution rather than go years later and who knows with appeals and end up with a more extreme result, which might be, but it's taken you years to get to that stage. Right now, there are a lot of insurance coverage issues about business interruption insurance, principally, and also workers' comp. And there's some issues, some states are as to what is covered and what isn't, and that's likely to be challenged in court. And in some cases, it may just be the most economic choice to do a private settlement, and we can make that happen even during the pandemic through remote mediation. Mediation can help parties communicate even when they're hostile, because messages are funneled through the mediator. The mediator's job is to take that message and reframe it and state it in a way that isn't going to hopefully make the other side jump up and scream and walk out in in-person mediations. And so even when parties have been very hostile towards each other, using the mediator can help diffuse. Similarly, the mediator can be the foil. I have been in mediations where the attorneys have confided in me that they didn't have good client control, or there wasn't a good attorney-client relationship. They tried to make certain recommendations, and the clients were very upset. And to make those recommendations, they didn't want to have the client feel that the attorney wasn't on the client's side. So you can play good cop, bad cop in mediation, and that's true in video mediation as well as when everyone's in the same place. It was, oh, I'm not saying this, Ms. Sting, that there are these other issues that we haven't really put into the mix before. So that's a way to diffuse a situation and calm clients and make them see a point of view that maybe you've been trying to get them to see all along. In general, clients express greater satisfaction with a mediated settlement than with a trial result. So now, how do you make, now we've talked about the why, let's talk about the how. Here are some different platforms that people are using for mediation. And on the top, you've got Blue Jeans, which I do know some mediators have used. I have not used that. I don't have experience with that. Legaler was created just this year, within the last year, specifically for the legal community. It has certain and I think this has potential. I tried it. I found it more difficult to use than Zoom, but you may come across it. Skype for Business is something that's been used for a long time and for meetings. And along the bottom there, you've got 3 more platforms that have been used for meetings. But Zoom is the one that has emerged as the platform of choice. People are using it a lot. It's sort of become almost like a running joke in our culture that so many people are doing so many Zoom things. And you've probably seen, right, in the same exact place. You see me here now. And, you know, people, each one of those boxes is actually called a participant box. Some people call them Hollywood squares or Brady Bunch boxes. You get the idea. All right, so what do you as the attorney need to do? The first thing is you need to open a Zoom account, and it is free. And here's the recurring theme of this presentation. You have to practice. So you can practice alone just to get familiar with the controls. If you have multiple email addresses and multiple devices, you can actually create multiple participants and work with it that way. But I would like to suggest to you that you don't need to know necessarily how to be the host, although I have used it for some virtual dinner parties, which were a lot of fun. But you just need to know the controls for being a participant. So you can participate in Zooms with friends and family. Talk to the mediator for your case and say, hey, do you provide a free practice session? A lot of mediators are doing that. I've done free practice sessions with people in my mediations so that they get a feel for it and a comfort level. And practice with your client. The practice with the mediator, you're not going to do it all together. Okay, so it might just be attorneys, it might be just one side. If the other side agrees that this is going to be purely technology, nobody's talking about the case, that needs to be worked out in advance. But a practice session just to look at the technology with the mediator is a good idea. And you don't have to be an expert. every time I use Zoom, it seems like I learn something else. There's some new feature. It's kind of notorious for hiding some of the controls. There's a lot of controls. So for example, there is a control if you put your cursor along the bottom. At the beginning of this program, I said, welcome everyone. So you might just want to try that now. You might want to see if you can chat and just say to everybody, you can choose to whom to direct your chat. You can direct it to all panelists or to all panelists and attendees. And just, you know, play with that a little bit and chat with us. If you say, hey, Teddy, that sounds great, but I can't get this person on the other side of the case to go along with the program. So let's talk about what some of those objections are. One of them is, oh, I heard these things about Zoom, they're not secure. Okay, so there have been some issues which have pretty much been resolved, but the thing, those cases that you read about with what they call Zoom bombing were in large meetings. So when you get a link to come to a Zoom meeting now, there is a word embedded in it and it is unique to you. One of the things in my rules and that I confirm when people convene is you haven't shared, do not share this link with anybody, and confirm when they come into the mediation, you have not shared this link with anybody. So now only people who have the password can come in as a that's not going to apply in a mediation anyway. And also people come in now to a waiting room, and only people who the host admits can come into the main room. And in the waiting room, people can each other. And a host, the mediator, can throw out anybody who doesn't belong should somehow somebody shared one of those passwords in the rules that said they weren't supposed to do. So between the embedded password, the waiting room, and the instructions, those security concerns have pretty much evaporated. Well, we need to caucus. Well, you can caucus in Zoom. They have what they call breakout rooms. How the breakout rooms work is the mediator moves people into the rooms electronically. Only the people who are in the room can talk to each other. People who are not in the room cannot talk to each other. So as many rooms as are necessary can be created. And also people can come out of the rooms. You say to the mediator, as the attorney, I want to talk with you separately. The mediator can pull you out of the room and meet with you in the waiting room. And then you can go back into the caucus room with your client, just like you would if we were in a bricks and mortar situation. Sometimes people want to share documents, just like I'm sharing this PowerPoint. You can do that in Zoom. You can share a document off your computer quite easily. There's also something called a whiteboard function where maybe people are calculating things and saying, okay, the evaluation of the case is this because, and then they'll write some things down. So in a PI case, you might have, okay, well, the specials are $10,000 and I'm gonna say $30,000 for pain and suffering and another $10,000 for lost earnings. And so the value of this case is $50,000. You can do that on a whiteboard and people can all contribute. Then there's the objection, well, it's not the same as in-person mediation. And you know what? It's not, but it's sure darn close. And it's way better than doing it by just audio conference call or that situation where you've got the real check writer. People can see each other. I saw some court order, I don't remember where it was, not even necessarily in California, and they said that hearings for this court will go ahead when everyone can hear each other and see each other. And in Zoom, assuming all the technology is working, and we'll talk about that, naming certain disabilities and problems, and part of the reason that the defense wanted the mediation is so they wanted to see this person walk in and walk out and walk down the hall for a Coke. No, probably you're not. See, one of the things that is limiting in Zoom is that you only see what's on the screen. So, for example, you can't, one of the things is a participant can be distracted. They can be looking at something off screen, and you don't realize that instead of paying attention, they're playing solitaire. So there is that someone can be distracted and you might not pick up on it because you only see what's on the screen. Still, certainly in this situation we're all in now, this is an excellent solution. And for all the advantages that we talked about, it's a darn good one. And I think we'll all be using it a lot more even when the quarantine ends. Will you see someone's body language? I think to a great extent you can see a person's body language. In Zoom, when you talk to your client, you can say to them, hey, you can use your hands. You can point to make your point. You can be aware and conscious of what is on the screen. And so that might be something you want to coach your clients through to some extent on both things which are good, such as the expressive gesture, but also people forget that the camera is on. And so there have been some publicized situations of people walking in meetings, walking with their laptop into the bathroom. Supposedly Tiffany Haddish was one of the people who committed that faux pas. So remind your client that unless they stop video, we can see them. And unless they are muted, we can hear them. So you can use the audio and video functions to great effect, great persuasive effect in mediation. And you also have to remind your client about when those things are on. If your client wants to turn off the video, it's a good idea to let the mediator know. You can do that through the chat function if that's what everybody has agreed to, or you can just tell the mediator. We're going to talk about some other ways to communicate, other channels for communication during the mediation. What device should people use? In general, people should the biggest screen. That's going to get you the best picture. The controls on, so here we've got a laptop, a tablet, and a smartphone. And you can use Zoom. You can use the Zoom app on all those things. The controls are slightly different. I think you get the best control of the app on the laptop, but the general rule is the bigger the screen, the more effective the mediation is going to be. There have been a lot of television appearances by celebrities from home, and you can't even understand what they're saying because they don't have a good microphone. I'm using earbuds, and the microphone is pretty close to my mouth. You can buy a laptop, a computer that has extra sensitive microphone and speakers, just so you don't have to use these. All you're doing is participating in mediations from time to time. I don't think you need that, and for sure your client isn't going to go out and do that. So the best thing is to talk to the client and see what kind of microphone and speakers they can get. And ideally, where they are not speaking at a microphone, which is a foot or two away from them, they're going to come across more clearly, and I would suggest to you more effectively. So that's something you want to be conscious of and you want to talk to your client about is microphone and speaker quality. Internet connection. It needs to be a good internet connection. You want it so it won't cut out, won't freeze. Now we have lots of people at home and everybody's using the bandwidth. And so there have been situations where that happens. So talk to your client, ask them how they get their internet. Do they have Wi-Fi at home? Do they have a data plan on a smartphone? Talk to them about what their connection is and do some practice sessions. You can test their connection on Zoom to make sure it's adequate. So when we say secure, that means you're not on a public network such as Starbucks. Some people they assume, oh, no problem, I'll just go to Starbucks, I'll log in there, they have a good connection and I'll be fine. Well, the situation is maybe you don't care about your privacy with 30 of your best friends hovering around getting their coffee and croissant, but the other people in the mediation just might. And it is inappropriate in a mediation pursuant to the confidentiality rules in the evidence code and the government code for administrative actions to be in a situation where other people can be around and other people can be on the same network and can easily hack that network. Your mediator should send out rules, just like you sign an agreement to mediate. The rules for the remote mediation should be part of that agreement to mediate. If your mediator has sent you an agreement to mediate and doesn't include specific rules for remote mediation, even though it's going to be held remotely, you need to talk to the mediator and get that clarified so everybody's on the same literal page. So in those rules, it should include a restriction to only people who have signed that remote mediation agreement can attend. And that would include people in your client's household who may be wandering in and out. Oh, it's just my spouse, it's just my adult son. Just like you would sign a confidentiality agreement in a mediation venue, only people who sign the remote mediation agreement can attend. Can that be handled on a last-minute basis? Yeah, it can. But what you should be doing is talking to your client about who needs to be at that mediation, who are the real decision makers, and make sure everybody is on board, has the right technology. Acceptable locations, we talked about not Starbucks. And if they're going to be in a bedroom, to try to make that as, handle that as professionally as possible. There should not be any recording. Zoom allows recording. It hasn't, we don't enable that for mediation, but people can take screenshots theoretically or have the record function on their mobile device. And just like that is not permissible when we're all in the same venue, that is not permissible in video mediation, even though it is so easy to do. So making sure your client is prepared. Conduct a practice session. Make sure they know what to expect so that when they come in and they're in the waiting room and they can't talk to anybody and they don't understand why nobody can hear them, let them know in advance. Hey, when you first log on, there's going to be a waiting room. The mediator will admit you, and then people will be able to hear you and you'll be able to hear them. So if you don't give them the expectation, it can be a little confusing. Also, the breakout rooms, just like you would explain in a mediation venue where everybody's together. Some of the time we may be in joint session. A lot of the time we'll be in caucus. I will be with you. You can move in and out. for different reasons. Maybe we'll all get back together in joint session for a brainstorming. These are all things to let your client know to expect so they won't be taken aback when they happen. Go over with them what device they will be using, and go over with them what kind of access they have. If they're going to be using a smartphone, you would like them to use this in landscape rather than portrait. They'll appear much better on the screen for everyone else to see. They will make the best impression if they have their device in landscape. You do want to go over with them the confidentiality rules. They're the same rules that apply if this was not a remote mediation. So you're going to go over those evidence code rules with them, or if it's administrative matter government code, and assure them that nothing can be used in another civil forum that was that was used only in mediation. You know what? It's easy. You will find that as you use it, it's pretty darn intuitive and it's easy to use. So tell them that. Tell them that we're all here to help you. It's easy. You don't need to be nervous, even though for all those reasons we know they're nervous. Come on, when you go to mediation with a client, those clients are nervous anyway, okay? So you don't want them nervous about the technology. So let them know there's nothing to be nervous about. Ask them if they need a translator. Don't wait till the last minute. That translator's got to be on the confidentiality agreement too. Assure them, just like all in one place mediation, nothing can happen that you don't agree to. The mediator can't make any orders, rulings, judgments. I still get questions where people are confused about that. And part of being a lawyer and working with clients is you using your people skills. The mediator is going to send you instructions about how to log on, how to use the technology, things you need to do. Read them, read the instructions. There's a tendency among lawyers to just kind of glance at them and throw them in a file and not go over the instructions with the client. You can, it's not good, but you can kind of get away with it when we're all in the same place. It's really bad on video mediation if you haven't read the instructions. Did I mention practice? Yeah, I mentioned that. Okay. And then there's some things which, exchange contact information. Everyone who's going to be there should exchange, and I as the mediator, I circulate a document for everyone to give me their smartphone so they can get texts and their email. So during the mediation, especially a lot of people are nervous about the technology. So for example, in chat, you don't want to intend something to your client, or more commonly the other way around. Your client intends to say something to you while you're all listening to somebody else talk, and instead they send it to everybody instead of just to you. Okay, so they don't want to use the Zoom platform for those communications. They want to send you a text on the smartphone, or they want to send you an email on another device that they've got handy. And also it's a good way to say to the mediator who's in another caucus room, hey, we're ready for you to come back. You can use the chat function, but you can also text with each other. That's how I've done it. I've had people on smartphones and we've texted back and forth and they would say, okay, we're ready for you to come back in our caucus. And I know that attorneys and clients are texting each other during the mediation on this separate device. Everybody should have everybody else's contact information so that can happen, so that the attorneys can send a text to each other or something like that. There's a lot of reasons for doing that. Okay, in the mediation itself, these are just some tips for looking better. You want a dark background. So right now there's a window behind me, but the blinds are closed. If you have a really bright background behind you, I'm sure you've probably had the experience. You take a photo of someone while you're on vacation, the sun is behind and it's really bright, and then you look at the photo and in your phone and the person is really dark and you can't see their face, you can't make out their face. So if and in mediation, if you have it too bright behind your client or behind you, you end up looking like some kind of sinister figure. You don't want that. So use a dark background. Close all the other tabs on your computer, among other things. You don't want to accidentally share something that other people shouldn't see. Also, it uses up bandwidth. You might end up accidentally triggering sounds or some other pop-up alert that isn't pertinent to the mediation. You don't want it to be there. People, even on their other devices, there shouldn't be any internet activity other than pertaining to the mediation. If you're using the other device to text back and forth with your client, great, good idea. But on the other hand, people should not be Googling the latest parody song about the pandemic. Those additional devices should be muted so that we don't have these strange sounds, but also distractions during the mediation. For the mediation, don't wait to the last minute, log in early. Note, only one person can talk at a time. So Zoom has spotlights. There's like a green neon around the participant box of the person who's talking. So what that means is you have to be really respectful in waiting for other people to finish talking before you start talking, and vice versa. If you start talking while somebody else is still talking, because we all get excited about things that are happening in mediation, the beginning of what you just said, everybody might not have heard that, so you might have to repeat that. When you're not talking, use the mute function. There's a bunch of reasons for that. One is that you don't have the noise from the vacuum cleaner, from the spouse, or the kids fighting in the dining room, or just, while you're waiting in caucus for the mediator to come back, and maybe you're not talking to your client right now. Maybe, I don't know, I kind of sometimes talk to myself as I work. There's no reason to be unmuted if you're not going to talk. How to unmute? There's several ways to unmute. One is in your participant box. There's an icon for the microphone. You can hit mute and unmute. Also, usually in the bottom left corner, there's a mute and unmute function. But also, you can stay in muted, and then when you're ready to talk, hold down the space bar. The disadvantage of being on mute is you can forget it's on. You forget you're muted and you start talking. So you do want to be cognizant of that. If staying unmuted works for you because you forget, so be it. Those are all the considerations for you to think about in being in mute or unmuted. Chat function, again, you can direct it to host, which would be the mediator. You can direct it to everybody. In mediation, you cannot direct just to one person. So you would use your other devices to do that. You can do that in meetings, but in mediation, it should be set so that we don't want the participants, we don't want the clients on either side fighting with each other via private chats. So that would be disabled. Have your water, your coffee ready in advance, so you don't have to get up and run out. You tell your client, this is advice for your client, and you too. People should not be eating. That presents a horrible picture sometimes, and it's noisy. And you can take off the video, you can take off the sound, you can mute, but and we're going to get to what the alternative is in a second. But in general, people should not be on screen shoving a hot dog in their face. Not a good look. But you should ask for breaks as needed, especially in the longer mediations. You can send a chat to the mediator. Hey, I need to get up. I need to use the bathroom. I need to go get some water. When are we going to break for lunch? Whatever. Ask for breaks, just like you would in a mediation venue where everyone is all together. Asking for breaks is good, but running off without telling anyone and then showing up and shoveling food in your mouth with your mouth close to the camera, which is something I experienced yesterday, is not so good. Just as in a mediation venue where everyone is all together, ask for different groupings. You can say, hey, I want to meet just the lawyers with the mediator. Your client should tell your client they have the right to say, hey, you know what? I need to talk to you without the mediator being here. And sometimes clients say, I want to just talk to the mediator. So let your client know that different groupings are possible in video mediation, just as they are in mediation when we're all in the same place. What if something goes wrong? It's not the end of the world. Again, this is really important. You can tell your client, hey, there's Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will. No big deal. We can take care of it. Not a problem. Again, let them know this could happen and it's not a big deal. Everything's fine. The alternatives include logging out, re-logging in, using one of the other platforms like Free Conference Call has video, continuing via audio only. There's a lot of things that can be done. But the point is that the client doesn't need to clutch about it. Documents. Come with a draft settlement agreement is a really good idea. You can use screen sharing to collaborate on your settlement documents. If you don't have a full settlement, you might just have a memorandum of understanding of certain points, or you might have a stipulation for settlement with a full agreement to follow. We can use Adobe Sign and Fill is what I have used. There's DocuSign some people use, or very commonly I'm hearing from other mediators, the most common is people just email documents back and forth. Again, this is why it's a good idea to have a secondary device if possible, but otherwise you can still use your laptop. I got my tablet here, I've got my cell phone, and use all the things that are available to you. Again, this is all part of the competence and confidence so that your client knows you can get the job done. And what if the technology is just not there? So this is the part which is hard, because everything I've just told you is in the nature of best practices. What if you've got a client and they're using a phone like this, a flip phone, not a smartphone? Well, they can call in with audio. That would have, you want to disclose that before the mediation that this person is just going to call in. It really takes away both from the person who is on the legacy hardware, but it also takes away from the other people who, want to see body language and all those other reasons we talked about why video is better, why video allows you all the same visual compliments, that's with an E, compliments, as being in person, face to face. So, if you've got somebody using that, you're going to have to see if that's going to work for not just you and your client, but everybody. Here is a thought. If you are in a contingent fee situation, if your client absolutely doesn't have the hardware and can't afford the hardware, consider buying something and you would account that as a cost advance, something necessary for the mediation. So I saw that you can get a iPad Mini 2 for $200 on the internet. That's not right for everybody, but I just want you to think about if it's the difference between whether a mediation goes ahead or not. You can get them a really cheap tablet, and they might be really, really grateful, make you their best friend for life. However, that's, as we know, that's only half of the problem. The other problem is the internet. So I have heard of mediations in Los Angeles where people went to a place with free Wi-Fi, like the library, even though the libraries are closed, and logged on to their Wi-Fi. Well, Teddy, didn't you just say don't log on to a public Wi-Fi? Yes, I did. And this is not a good idea for all the reasons I just discussed. But I am aware that some mediations are proceeding where someone is sitting in their car with a device logged on to a public Wi-Fi. It's happening. Not the best practice, but it's happening. Another option is some attorneys, they don't have any staff, but they're going to their office and they're having the client come in. I don't know that in this picture, the people are 6 feet apart, but you get the idea. So again, not a best practice. I am not aware that law offices have been deemed essential. I'm happy to be contradicted on that if somebody knows. But I am aware that some mediations in Los Angeles have proceeded with an attorney in an unstaffed office meeting with a client and using the technology in the office. It's all about the relationship of you and your client. That's what it's about. Your client needs to be comfortable. You need to be comfortable. You need to feel that this mediation can have an optimal result for you and your client. And when everyone's comfortable, it's all unicorns and rainbows. We're going to look at some questions. Key documents. Well, there's a couple things. Okay, so the first question is talking about documents. Should they be ready to use or wait until a party introduces it? I would suggest that if you have any key documents, they should be part of your mediation brief, mediation statement, whatever you call it. You can designate your mediation brief as confidential for eyes of the mediator only, or you can circulate it. A lot of times people submit confidential mediation briefs, and then at some point during the mediation, it does get shared with the other side. But I would say that if there are key documents, it's better for the mediator to have them in advance and be able to look at them. Generally, if they are key documents, they've already been shared in discovery. So the other side isn't going to be surprised by this document. And if they are surprised, that's what I was talking about. Well, oh, but I have a report that counters that. I just don't have it with me. And maybe if they're working in a place where they have all the documents of the case around them, they can grab it. So the answer is attach it to your brief and decide whether to make your brief confidential or circulated. Breakout was something, yes, only the mediator can create I'm sorry. The question is, are the breakout rooms something only that the organizer can set up? And the answer is yes, only the mediator, Zoom calls that the host, only the mediator can set up the breakout rooms. Do you, as mediator, require that you should be included on the attorney-to-attorney communication? No, it's up to the parties. That's the thing about mediation. If the attorneys are willing to talk just to each other, and that happens all the time in mediation, that's that's fine. If somebody says, no, I won't meet with them without you being there, that's a different situation. But if the attorneys want to go talk to each other, that's great. And that's extremely common. So, for example, recently situation, the parties basically settled, but they were working out all the details. And the mediator, no participation. They were emailing stuff back and forth and working on finalizing the agreement. And the mediator didn't have to participate really at all. So yeah, yes, attorney to attorney on opposing sides can talk to each other without the mediator if that's what they want to do. Do I have a sample of instructions to participants regarding technology issues? I have some rules that I send to people in the mediations that I'm in. There are some sample instructions on the internet in a variety of places. What advantage does Zoom offer over Skype and WebEx? The mediation community has pretty much embraced Zoom. It is more, I'm not an expert on this. Let me say that as a caveat, but from everything I know, for purposes of mediation, because you've got the breakout rooms in particular, Zoom has that advantage. I do not know if Skype and WebEx has that, but everything that's been shown to me indicates that Zoom is a superior product. LegalAlert also has breakout rooms. It probably has gone through several iterations since I worked with it, but I found it a little bit more difficult to use. Well, actually, I found it a lot more difficult to use. And I found Zoom pretty easy. Do we have any other questions? Looks like we're good.
Yeah.